So what I'm curious about other than aliens are SDEs. What are SDEs?
Silent deadly effects
No.
syndrome.
SDEs, short for.
STES.
I mean,
Spez.
you've heard of near-death experiences, but have you ever heard of shared death experiences?
I have not.
It's about time.
Until you start talking, and then I'll say yes.
So in Vandy, I'm guessing you've never heard of them either.
I've heard. I don't know what they are.
So, I'm just gonna be completely upfront. Recently, Y-Files dropped an episode on it, and I listened to it, and I was like, "That's really interesting. I want to talk about it." Most of my information comes from that video, and it's like a couple weeks out. So if anyone has watched their video and you're like, "Hey, that sounds a lot like that," I stole it from him, and I apologize. But I did do a little extra research and have something he did not include that I find interesting.
The truth.
So, shared death experiences. In 1975, Raymond Moody published his book, Life After Life. And it's mostly focusing on near-death experiences, and that's kind of that's the book that coined the term. It's talked about, and he really got into death experiences in general. And while he was doing,
Did he go around and interview a bunch of people?
yes,
Okay, I've heard of it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I knew it. While he was writing his book, he interviewed a lot of people who had been clinically dead and came back. Well, you might have heard of that part.
I have heard of it because of the Y-Files.
Did you watch? Was that recent episode? If you watched it, this is the past couple weeks.
Couple weeks, yeah.
So then you know everything I'm about to say then.
Yes and no, because I completely forgot about it. But
So you just forgot.
yeah,
It'll just come back to him as you talk.
keep going.
So everyone that he talked to saw the tunnel, light, dead relatives showing up, a strangely deep peace, and people rule it all out, saying, "Oh, it's just hallucinations from your body shutting down and lack of oxygen, endorphins, all that stuff." But everybody that he talked to had similar enough experiences that it's like, is it really that? But when he talked to people, he also heard from people who weren't the ones who died and came back. They were people who were just in the room when it happened. They weren't sick. They weren't dying. They were not impaired in any way. They're just in the room when a person's dying, perfectly healthy themselves, fully conscious. And they would say all the stuff that the near-death experience people see, the tunnel, the light, the dead relatives, the same peace and like calm feeling, they're like, that happened to me. Like I saw their grandmother appear. I felt really calm. I saw like a shining light. I was not high. I was not drunk. I was not asleep.
I was gonna go to work, but then I got high.
So Moody called this a shared death experience. And it's so people started telling them about their experiences with this. Mist rising from a person's body. Healthcare workers in the UK would even see this in their hospitals, some of their healthcare workers. Sometimes they heard music, like calming, otherworldly, there was no tune to it, like a song. It was just like a calming melody that would just start being played. Sometimes the room changed shape a little bit, like reality got a little distorted around them and would like stretch or collapse. One woman said it was like geometry of the room stopped behaving normally. And it would be not always one person. Like I said, it would be 3 or 4 people. Not everybody in the room either.
Okay.
There could be like 5 people and 3 of them experience it.
That's odd.
And they would even see, like the light flashing before my eyes. Some people would even see memories of the person that was dying, like that person's memories. There would be kids who never saw their grandparents who would be like, I remember, or I saw when dad was talking with grandma. They would know who they are, and they would be able to tell information that like they would not know because they saw it play out before them.
Would they have a dream, or would they just stand there?
No,
as
this
the
is like
person
you're
dies?
standing next to, not
Yeah.
necessarily on the deathbed, but like, for example, you're at the deathbed, you're there to be there when your father dies, and then you just see this stuff play out.
That's crazy. I don't know. Maybe I'm so confused.
And these would be details that would get confirmed by other family members. So it's like they said this happened, and then another family member like, yeah, that happened. They weren't there for it. They didn't know about it, but yeah. And so it's just weird. And skeptics want to dismiss it, and maybe it's not a real thing, but Moody, the guy who wrote the book, became more interested in it, and that's because he had an experience like that. After he was already looking, so he wrote the book in 1975. He was already interested, obviously. In 1994, his mom was dying of cancer, and so 6 of their family members gathered around her bed, and they were all there together, and 4 of them felt themselves lifting up off the ground.
Sick.
And the room changed around him. Moody says it was kind of like an hourglass, and he said it felt like he was being caught in a riptide.
The room felt like an hourglass.
It looked like an hourglass, like the shape distorted
Oh, wow.
to like an hourglass kind of look, and they felt themselves being lifted being pulled by a tide, but instead of being pulled under, they were pulled up. And then the light changed. And then one of their sisters said, look, Dad's here. He's coming to get her. And they saw like their dad coming down, who had been dead for 2 years.
That's unbiblical.
All 6 of the people in the room had some kind of experience. 4 of them had the lifting and seeing things change, and a few of them saw their dad.
That's weird. All 6 of them had an experience.
Moody said it felt like the fabric of the universe was just tearing apart. And a weird energy, like a calming but weird energy of whatever comes next. So he was interested in these events already. Like I said, he wrote the book. He wasn't fully convinced that this was a real thing. Just was like writing books, or I don't know if multiple books, but writing and saying this is what I've heard, but he wasn't fully convinced. But once he experienced it himself, he's like, okay, there's something real here.
This sounds familiar, but at the same time, it seems like I haven't heard this.
But here's the thing with shared death experience. They aren't always, in fact, oftentimes aren't close family members and loved ones. They happen with people that are complete strangers. Jeff Olson and the ER doctor. This is what I opened with the hook. In Easter 1997, Jeff Olson fell asleep at the wheel driving home, and the car rolls 8 times going 75 miles an hour. His wife and their 14-month-old son die at the scene. His 7-year-old son survives. Jeff is barely alive with a broken back and a tear opening his stomach from his seatbelt. And his legs are all messed up, and he had to get his left leg amputated. And he's been 6 months in the hospital, over 18 surgeries. What's interesting is his ER doctor's name is also Jeff. So there's two Jeffs. His doctor, Jeff O'Driscoll, was working, and he's not even assigned to his case. So it's actually not even his doctor, but it's Dr. Jeff, ER doctor, working in there. A nurse named Rachel grabs him and tells him to come to the trauma room. She says Olson's wife is there, and O'Driscoll already knew what she meant because for a couple of months, both him and this nurse saw her come into the room more than once.
Like walk in there or just appear?
Over Jeff's body, hanging above him or floating above him.
Nice.
Just like watching him. She had her curly blonde hair, white clothes, kind of see-through, and she would even look at them, not just her husband. Like she would.
So Doctor Strange type.
Yes. But it's the ER doctor and the nurse.
Very odd.
At the same time, obviously Jeff's fighting for his life for this bit. So he's like conscious, not really conscious, but he kind of has like visions or memories of his time. And he says later he was floating above the crash scene. And while he was floating above the crash scene, it was like his wife and his child were up there with him, but they went on. She said she couldn't stay, and he said he didn't want to go back because she was dead and his son was dead. And she says, you can't leave. It's not time yet. You need to take care of Spencer, which is their other son. And so whenever he comes back, the two Jeffs talk and kind of become friends because they both had like they felt connected. Like they shared this moment together, even though they didn't even, because it's not the same, but they felt connected and became friends and stay in contact with each other. And both of them wrote books about it.
It's nothing but a money grab.
Yeah, it's just funny grab. Sure. And Jeff.
You know, that's why they wrote books. Anytime somebody writes a book about their experience, it's just a money grab.
World War I. Karl Skala, German soldier, was in the foxhole with his best friend when an artillery shell hit. Shrapnel goes everywhere. His friend dies in his arms. Skala says his consciousness pulled up and out of his body. He was floating above the battlefield, above the trenches, looking down at mud, smoke, bodies, and everything. His dead friend was floating beside him. The two of them rose together toward a light, and at some point Skala stopped. He didn't know why he stopped, but he stopped, and his friend kept going and disappeared into the light. Skala woke back up in the foxhole, alive, still holding the body of the man he just watched leave.
Dude, World War I?
Yep.
The worst.
Yeah, it was
War.
bad to be a soldier because
Oh my gosh.
the weapons were just strong enough to tear you up, but just primitive enough to not instant kill you.
You want to
And
look
the
up.
medical was horrible back then compared to what we have now.
You want to look up.
Like
one
it
of the
could
worst
instant
battles.
kill you, but like
The Battle of Verdun. That's one of the worst battles in World War I history. Terrible. Continue before I start dropping more historical facts.
then
here.
there's a case where the person wasn't even there with the person who died.
What?
In 2000, William Peters was volunteering in hospice care, and he sat with a dying man named Ron, a former merchant marine. Peter had been reading to him for weeks. One day, in the middle of reading, Peter feels something grab him. Did my notes get messed up? I think my notes got messed up because there was a story of someone not there, but this guy was there. So I don't know why it happened.
Probably just exited out of your notes.
No, I know I didn't. Okay. One day in the middle of reading, Peter feels something grab him. Not physically, but more like his awareness is yanked out of his body. And he finds himself floating above Ron's bed, looking down at the room. And he sees himself in the chair, and he realizes Ron is floating beside him too. And then they have a conversation, being like, this is kind of neat. And then Ron's like, well, peace out, and leaves. And Peter goes back into his body. Ron officially dies a few minutes later.
You know what I've noticed throughout every experience? There's not any sense of fear at all, or hesitation or anything. It's just a simple, oh, I'm here now. Well, this is cool. And then they get sucked back into their bodies.
Peter's, this guy, he doesn't tell anybody what happened because he thinks he's crazy. And he's like, obviously that didn't happen, whatever. But then when he hears about these experiences in Moody's book, he's like, that's what happened to me. And that's when he comes about it. Eventually they found the Shared Crossing Project in 2013 and start collecting cases of shared death experiences. About 64% of shared death experiences he collected were remote. So now it's going, I don't know why I don't know what happened to my notes and why I put the doesn't happen in the same room, and then had an entire in the same room and then goes back. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to be in the same room again. I don't know what happened there.
It's okay. It's okay.
Annie Capp was sitting in her office in London when she suddenly starts choking and can't breathe. And then she has an overwhelming dread about her mother, who is in the hospital over 5,000 miles away. She calls the hospital and Betty dies while Annie is on the phone. Another case, a man named Mark who's flying across the United States when he feels a telepathic connection to his father dying in a Canadian hospital, and he hears his father say he doesn't know how to do this. So Mark visualizes walking up a staircase with him toward a light, and at the top they're greeted by Mark's grandmother. His father hugs her, turns to Mark, and says he didn't know it was going to be this easy. Shortly after this, Mark's phone rings, and his brother tells him their father just died. And Mark told him, yeah, I know. Then there's a woman who hadn't spoken to hadn't spoken to her ex in over a decade. And out of nowhere, she feels his presence, hears his voice in her mind, thanking her for the years they had together. She texts her daughter immediately, and her daughter says her father had just died.
So there's a lot, is what you're saying. A lot of these experiences.
Then there's cases with kids, and I already mentioned on this, that they'll have instances like this too, and they'll be little kids. So they're not like necessarily mentally thinking of this. Like, you know, like as an adult, you have emotions, you kind of have your thoughts about death, and you might force yourself to see something, if that makes sense. Like, you don't really see anything, but you tell yourself you did because it makes you feel better. A little kid's not going to do that.
It's called FOMO.
Yeah, that's what it is. FOMO. They're dying. I want in.
I want to know.
No. So the with kids having it, it's harder to narrow it or to consider it being that. Penny Sartori was preparing to get a bath, or preparing not to get a bath, to give a bath to a dying patient. And when she touched the bed, and suddenly the room disappeared.
What?
And then she could feel everything her patient was feeling, even his pain. And even though he couldn't speak, she clearly hears him say, "Leave me alone. I just want to go. Let me die in peace." And then that was it. They died.
Ouch.
So basically, she touched the bed, and then
And she killed someone.
she touched the bed, the world vanished, and she felt all the intense pain he was feeling, and could feel his thoughts.
Was it just like black? Did it just go black?
I guess. And then he died. Here's another hospice nurse, but I don't know. We're fine. We don't need that. Here's where Andrew's gonna get real happy. Sometimes it's not even people; it's pets.
Oh gosh.
There's documented cases where comatose dogs would suddenly sit up and wag their tails like they were greeting someone unseen. And one woman reported seeing her dead cat sitting at the foot of her dying father's bed purring. And the cat had been dead for 3 years. So you can see your cats too.
I'm okay. I don't want to see dim cats.
So this has been a thing that's been going on for quite a long time.
Are there any reports of this going on in the Middle Ages
There were
that you know of, or no?
Tibetan Buddhists have a practice called Pawa,
Power.
where the living help guide the dying through transition, and it's very much like most cases where the family member will help them find their way to the light.
Sort of like Day of the Dead.
There is 8th century Christian recordings describing lights appearing as monks died. Aboriginal Australian traditions include communal dying. So it's got a range of
Years. Yeah.
and locations. Now, this is where I think it gets more interesting. So I'm done giving examples, and now I'm going to talk about it being taken seriously. It's been peer-reviewed studies that have gone on about this. And recently, 2021, William Peters publishes the first peer-reviewed study focused specifically on shared death experiences in the American Journal of Hospice and Palliative Medicine. It analyzed 164 SDEs and from 107 people and found 4 main forms. Some people sensed the moment someone died even without being there. Others witnessed strange phenomenon at the bedside. The third group felt pulled into the experience itself, like they were being taken into the tunnel or toward the light. And the rarest group were the ones actively walking them through it. 87% of experiencers came away convinced of an afterlife. Not open to it, convinced. And in some cases, these were people who said, before this moment, afterlife's not real, and would have called people like that crazy. So they're not always people who lean into this. And oftentimes, their grief didn't vanish, but it changed how they felt. So it made it easier for them to grieve or to move past it than they would have without the experience. And in other cases, the fear of death just disappeared entirely. Now, this I found myself when trying to look into it. I found a government survey posted on a government website, PubMed, called Shared Death Experiences, a multicultural survey from the National Library of Medicine. And so it's not very long, so I just copy and pasted it. I'm going to just read it. Background. Shared death experiences and after-death communication experiences are non-ordinary mental experiences related to the death of a known or unknown person. Methods. These experiences were investigated by surveying 4 samples with different cultural backgrounds: Italian, Mexican, Brazilian, and Taiwanese people. 121 participants reported 146 experiences of this type. Among the main characteristics of these experiences, visual, auditory, and feeling experience, which comprised 74% of all experience, were experienced both in a dream state and a normal state of consciousness. Furthermore, most of these experiences were lived before or after the death of the person in relationship with the participants. More importantly, these experiences influence the participant's death interpretation, favoring the belief that death affects only the body, but consciousness of the deceased person survives in another reality and sometimes can communicate with relatives and friends still alive in this reality. No substantial differences were observed among the different subsamples. Conclusion. As to the origin of SDEs and ADCEs, we discussed that whereas for most of them, in particular those lived after the death of a relative or friend, we can assume hallucinatory characteristics triggered by emotional needs for others, for example, those related to unknown individuals and or those experienced before the death of the person still in good health. But it is not possible to exclude their anomalous connections and a real encounter with a deceased person. So their conclusion was, in most cases, it was probably a hallucination or some sort of coping mechanism. But there are times we cannot rule out that it's real.
Well, the majority of the time in science, unless it's the same experience is able to be, same thing is able to be experienced multiple times, they can't say it's a fact because of the scientific method, right? You got to ask the question first and then observe and all that mess. But if they can't repeat the process and get the same exact answer, then of course they're not going to say it's a fact. So
Yeah, but the fact that they were just like, maybe it's real.
well, they don't want to say, yeah, I mean, they don't want to say that, hey, it could be real, it could be not real, because they don't want to get people's hopes up. They don't want to make anybody mad or whatever. I don't know, but it's something odd. It's something weird. It doesn't happen to every single person. That doesn't happen to the majority of people. It's a very minute amount of people that experience this, I think. So it's very hard to study it, and you don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. The one point also is that this is not a cultural thing because
yeah, it's multicultural. That's what they were saying.
The four I named, the Italian, Mexican, Brazilian, Taiwanese, but then there's also Hindu, there's also Christian, there's also Buddhist, and it's all more or less the same, maybe slightly different wording because of how the culture would word it, but when you boil it down, it is the same stuff. So it's not just a culture influencing how you'd see death.
Yeah.
Of course, skeptics still be skeptic. And in a lot of cases, it probably isn't real, but they don't always explain, like the way skeptics explain it don't always make sense, especially with the remote SDEs. Like how do you explain? And I think we've all heard stories of people, or maybe someone you even know, who's like, someone I knew was dying and I just felt it. I just knew.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
And that kind of falls in line with that too. Like, it's like, I just know they died. How do you explain that? Especially if it's out of nowhere. Like if they're slowly dying.
I mean, you hear a lot about mother's instincts too, like
or twins,
moms, like an intuition.
Yeah. It's like mother instinct, intuition, or twins.
Yeah, when moms know that their kid's in trouble or their kid's sad or whatever, and they give them a text, say, "Hey, what's going on? You doing okay today?" And they're like, "No, I'm actually not." I mean, everybody's heard that too. So we're spiritual beings, and we're going to experience spiritual things somewhat, one way or another. So that's kind of what I I come up with. Is it true? Maybe. I think some of them could be. Some of them seem a little far fetched.